Hi, and welcome to the Revive, Thrive, and Optimize podcast. I'm Billy Weiss, compounding pharmacist and health and wellness expert, and I'm excited to have my co-host here, Janet Miller. Good morning, Janet.
Good morning, Billy.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Nice and early this morning, isn't it?
7 a.m. on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, we're getting.
I don't know if I would get up this early for anything else.
We're getting started early today, but we're really excited, Janet, to have you and to have today's program. So, tell us what you have in store for us today.
So today I wanted to talk about hormones.
Okay.
And ask you questions about hormones and maybe give a little bit of my experience and background using hormones for the past almost 10 years. And it's funny because I was living in Asheville and I was asked to come to Shelby one evening to do a workshop. And the workshop was going to be at a yoga studio, and they wanted me to talk about hormones. I didn't know much, but I knew I had some experience. Well, fast forward 9 years later, I'm now living in Shelby because right after that hormonal talk, I walked outside and met a man named Don Miller. And then we got married, and I've been in Shelby ever since.
That's awesome.
So
I don't think you've ever told me that story.
So I came here to Shelby to talk about hormones, and here we are.
Wow.
To talk about hormones.
Well, that's cool.
And I've learned a little bit more.
Yeah, you should know a little more than you did 9 years ago. You've been through the summit 8 times. So
yeah, I've been through Billy's class.
Hopefully we've got you a little bit of information.
And it's still confusing, very confusing. So in the beginning, when I started having some problems, sleeplessness, hot flashes, oh my goodness, night sweats, joint pain, weight gain, mental clarity just seemed to come and go, and just lots of brain fog. And I started to go to my doctor to talk about it, and she said, well, let's check your hormones, and we did that. I went back, got the results, and she said, we're going to put you on a patch and an antidepressant. I didn't want to go on an antidepressant, but I did for a little while. And then that caused more problems. And then it was just kind of like a roller coaster. And so then I ripped off the patch, stopped the antidepressant, and started looking for bioidentical hormones. So one of the questions I get is, what is the difference between hormone replacement therapy being bioidentical hormones or going to my regular doctor and getting on pharmaceutical hormones? Because at the time, I could only afford the pharmaceutical hormones because insurance paid for it. And then when I went to the bioidentical, it was very, very, very expensive. So that was kind of the start.
Yeah. So, Janet, that's a great question. And there is so much confusion on this topic that it makes getting real compounded, micronized, bioidentical hormones much more difficult. And I don't mean difficult as in they're not available. I mean difficult as in the medical community is confused because they've been trained in medical schools, and pharmacy schools do the same thing. Nursing schools do the same thing by the pharmaceutical companies and what they are determining to be hormones for women. The problem is, what is determined by them typically to be hormones for women is not what is bioidentical or what your body naturally makes. And so when we use the term hormone replacement therapy, that's a broad term that can mean lots of things. Like we'll have a series on this as we go, but like estrogen, that's a broad term. And we're going to talk about some of the things that the quote drug companies say is estrogen. It's probably not, it is estrogen, but it's not estrogen for a woman, but that's who we're using it for. And so bioidentical means exactly equivalent to what your body would make, what my wife's body would make, what any woman's body would make. Hormone replacement therapy can be from a variety of sources, though, when the pharmaceutical companies are using that term. And so that term can be used very loosely. So I'm always very careful. And when I do a consultation, I have the woman write it down. Compounded, micronized, bioidentical hormones. That's all I'm ever talking about when I'm doing a consultation with somebody. And I'm going to reach down, I'm going to grab a piece of paper from the drug companies, and I'm going to read something to everybody, and I hope this starts to make sense.
While he's reaching down, I want to say that when I go to my regular doctor, OBGYN, they look at me and say, we don't know enough about bioidenticals. There's not been enough research, and we recommend that you don't go on those. So then that became very confusing when I've got one doctor saying, don't do this, it's dangerous, you could get cancer, and then the other one's going, no, this is good for you. So
Janet, and that comes from the misinformation and using the wrong term for hormones, or using a general term for hormones. I'm going to read from the drug company's own information here. That's what I have in front of me, the package insert that the pharmacist gets. So this is where that confusion, that's a great point you make, because I hear it all the time. And that's why I said it can be harder to obtain, not because we make them and compound them every single day. The problem is the medical community doesn't get it. They think that it causes these kind of things. So I'm going to read directly from the manufacturer's package insert. What are some of the possible, now these are not all, and I'm going to read at the end, some of the possible side effects of what they call hormones: breast tenderness, milk secretion, breakthrough bleeding, spotting, minor vaginal bleeding, irregular periods, amenorrhea, vaginal secretions, headache, nervousness, dizziness, depression, insomnia, sleepiness, fatigue, premenstrual-like syndromes. I mean, isn't that what these are for? Thrombophlebitis, which is inflamed veins, blood clots, itching, hives, skin rash, acne, hair loss, hair growth, abdominal discomfort, nausea, bloating, fever, increase in weight, swelling, changes in vision, sensitivity to contact lenses, cancer of the womb, cancer of the uterus, cancer of the breast, heart attacks, strokes, blood clots, gallbladder disease, Alzheimer's disease. Then they have some box warnings, which means they're more serious and more common. And those box warnings are cardiovascular disorders in general. That list, pulmonary embolism, deep venous thrombosis, strokes, myocardial infarctions or heart attacks. Then they have a separate box warning for strokes alone. Then they have a separate box warning for coronary heart disease, which encompasses all kind of problems, right? Then they have a separate box warning for venous thromboembolism, which is a blood clot. So when you see this and you go talk to your doctor or your nurse practitioner or your physician assistant, that's what they think we're talking about. When actually, Janet, we're talking about 100% the opposite. And they go on to say, by the way, at the end of that little section on side effects, possible side effects, these are not all the possible side effects. Please ask your doctor or pharmacist for others. I mean, what else is there? At some point you run out of disease processes to think about. So
it's scary.
That's where the confusion comes in. So the medical community has intermingled bioidentical hormones with that.
Okay.
And that is not what we're talking about. And nor would I ever recommend those, or for any reason recommend anything with negative side effects. So one of the things that I always tell people is everything I'm going to recommend for you will have a cost, but it will not have a list of side effects. It will only have beneficial effects. And so I think that sets it apart. Number one, bioidentical hormones, compounded micronized bioidentical hormones, are exactly equivalent to what the woman's body or the man's body would make. So our bodies recognize those hormones. They know what they are. They know how to metabolize those hormones. We don't get any of those side effects that we just listed. As a matter of fact, what you see with bioidentical hormones is we get the opposite of all those things. We get less heart attacks. We get less strokes. We get less Alzheimer's. We get less bone loss. We get less cancer. So it is a clear contrast, and I want to make sure everybody is 100% clear.
Less heart disease too, right?
Absolutely. It is 100% opposite. There's the episode of Seinfeld where George does the opposite and everything works out. I always tell people you might want to take a lesson when the medical community often tells us to do things. If we do the opposite, we'll be in a much better spot.
Yeah. So when it comes to hormones, everybody knows about estrogen and testosterone and progesterone. But what are each of those? And I think the scary one for women is, I'm not going to take testosterone. I'll turn into a man, or, I'll get too muscular. But don't we, as women, make more testosterone than we do estrogen? Can you explain a little bit about testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and what the differences are?
Yeah, great question. So testosterone is a critical hormone for men and women. It is absolutely true that men make more testosterone than a woman. The testes of a man make more testosterone. What sets the men and women apart is amount of testosterone that a man makes, amount of estrogen, or estradiol. I should be more specific. Estrogen's another one of those broad terms.
There's 3 different kinds of estrogen.
There's 3 different kinds of estrogen in the woman's body. Yeah, so testosterone is critical for both men and women at different levels. Yeah. Estrogen is critical, hear me on this, for both men and women at different levels. Progesterone is especially critical mainly for women. Men do have small levels of progesterone and make small levels, but not nearly the effect of what women make. And we can talk about why. So let's just start with the testosterone question, because it is a common misunderstood hormone, especially for women. So I tell every woman, if you don't want to have better brain health, better bone health, better muscle health, less fat, better sex, longer life, improvement in quality of life, feel your best, look your best, think your best, your skin's your best, then by all means do not use bioidentical compounded micronized testosterone. But if you want to have all those effects and more, I'm not naming them all. If you want to keep your youthfulness, if you want to keep your vigor, if you want to keep your stamina, if you want to, you need to have optimal levels of testosterone in the system.
I can tell you that when I started taking bioidentical testosterone, is that what I would call it?
Yes.
I started feeling completely different, like almost immediately.
Yes. Some people, if they're very depleted, and we find it very common for women of all ages at this point. It used to be women 35 and above is where all these hormone consultations come in. Now it's much younger.
Well, and to back up a little bit, before starting to take testosterone, I found out that I should take DHEA. Like there's certain supplements that my body was missing.
Yeah.
Because I'm a yoga teacher. I want to do everything natural. I don't want to take anything. But my body and my lifestyle, first I had to have the eating right and the lifestyle right, then get the correct supplements that help to make these hormones work in my body.
Right.
And so I know for me, DHEA was important to also have to help the testosterone.
Well, DHEA is kind of known as our anti-aging hormone. Okay?
Okay.
And it is a precursor to testosterone. Some of the DHEA will be converted by our bodies to testosterone. So DHEA is very critical for a lot of the benefits that go along with testosterone that I've named already. So DHEA, a lot of times when you see, you'll see people, well, you're one of those people who you look and you go, I don't think she's as old as they say she is. That is typically a sign of adequate DHEA being in the system.
Oh, okay.
It is truly the kind of the youthful, more youthful look, the more youthful feel hormone. Now, DHEA is not one of those hormones that we will typically just give a man or a woman and they will just feel that all of a sudden. But I tell them it's kind of like vitamin D. You don't necessarily always feel vitamin D, but you know there's massive data and studies on how beneficial it is. And it is working behind the scenes to help testosterone and other hormones work. So it's a hormone that we use a lot to balance with the symphony, the orchestra of the estrogen, the estradiol, I should say again, the testosterone, the progesterone, the DHEA, and often pregnenolone, which is one we can talk about later. But So yeah, DHEA is critical and it's overlooked by almost all providers. Now, Kim Spain, the provider that is our kind of preferred recommended provider, she definitely does not overlook any of these because she's been trained through the same system that I have. Right. So we're looking at that entire orchestra symphony of hormones. So we've kind of hit on testosterone and DHEA, which are two really big ones. Most people are not as familiar with DHEA, so I'm certainly glad you brought it up. Very important to have adequate, optimal DHEA levels. The levels of hormones, I should point this out, that we will be trying to get a woman to on a blood test will not correlate with what the quote norm is.
The standard lab.
Because the standard lab is the sick, fat, diabetic, waiting to have a heart attack, cancer, stroke, blood clot woman. And we don't want to be there.
And it's just an average of taken from all people. This is an average, or
some of it is average and some of it is literally made up.
Okay.
And some of these lab directors will tell you that it's literally made up.
And hasn't it changed? Didn't it used to say you could have this much testosterone, and now it says you should only have this much
now testosterone? That's where the averages come in. They keep lowering these levels because America is getting sicker and sicker. So I tell everybody, we don't want normal levels, we want optimal levels. So let's get that clear. Ladies, if you get your blood work, and at the top, when you're on a regimen that I would recommend in a consultation, your levels will be in the red.
It will say it always says I've got too much vitamin D.
Right.
I've got too much testosterone. Yes. I've got too much, too much cholesterol. It always tells me I'm high.
So we want to get people there because that's where we get the benefits. That's where the studies show the benefits come from, and that's where the benefits are felt. So
and do we go by how we feel? Are you looking for a certain number that I need to have this much, or is it more how do I feel?
No, it's more how do I feel.
And we're all different.
And everybody's going to be different, but the beautiful thing is for everybody to feel their best, they're going to be outside the quote normal range. Because remember, normal's based on sick, fat, and tired and not what we want to be. We want to feel our best all the time, right? So
well, now that we're on testosterone, I've taken testosterone many different ways. So
easy.
I've done shots. I've done creams.
Yeah.
I've done pellets.
Yes.
And I have done troches. So can you talk a little bit about when you're doing these hormones, the delivery system?
Well, there is a preferred method for each of these hormones, and so we definitely want to clear that up. So let's just hit the two that we've dove into so far the most. DHEA should be oral. Okay. It should be an oral, compounded, micronized, bioidentical capsule.
And where do I get that?
Well, we compound it at Prescriptions Plus. There are other compounded pharmacies.
So do I need my doctor to give me a prescription?
You do. Okay. You do. Now, you can buy DHEA over the counter. It will not be what we're talking about.
And I know the answer to that, but I'm trying to bring up these questions that so many women ask me.
Yeah, and we have a really high-quality, over-the-counter sublingual DHEA tablet that they would hold under their tongue or in their cheek. But it is not going to get the levels that the prescription will get, for sure, that we compound. So DHEA needs to be sustained release, and it needs to be a capsule. That's where the studies show the benefits are.
SR, meaning sustained release.
It means it's released over like a 6-hour period, right? SR, sustained release. We would typically have the lady take that at bedtime. Now, why do we want to take DHEA at bedtime? And why is it so anti-aging? And why does it make us look youthful? Well, DHEA is the antithesis. It's the opposite of cortisol.
Oh,
it's the opposite of stress.
It's going to help you calm down. It's going to help you sleep.
Exactly. So it calms us. It relaxes us. It takes us from that sympathetic or that fight or flight state
to the parasympathetic.
Into the parasympathetic, the rest and digest state. So DHEA, we all hopefully today understand that stress is killing a lot of us, right?
I miss that because I've got to tell you, I've been taking my DHEA in the morning. So now I'm going to take my DHEA in the evening.
Most typically we would have ladies do it at bedtime and men because it helps offset the effects of cortisol.
Okay.
So it makes us relax, makes us sleep better.
And cortisol makes us fat.
Well, excess. Now, cortisol is
we
critical.
need it,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
We want cortisol, but we want it to go up in the morning, and as the day goes, it declines. It
right.
goes down. By evening, it's at a very low level.
Right.
Should be. But again, so many of us are so busy. We're looking at blue lights. We got Wi-Fi. We got kids. We've got jobs. We've got stress. It doesn't happen that way. A lot of times we can invert our cortisol curve actually from all the stress, and it's higher at night. And so we can't sleep, and then in the mornings it goes down,
and we can't wake
and we
up.
can't get up and want to go anywhere.
Totally
we're tired.
Experienced that.
So yeah, people will invert their cortisol curve, and so DHEA is one of those things we can do along with the with the magnesium.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I'm going to switch that up. Delivery system.
Yeah, so testosterone. So DHEA should be the capsules, the sustained release capsules. Testosterone can be any of those methods that you said, but the highly preferred method that gives the best levels and the best results is a compounded micronized bioidentical cream.
Cream, okay.
And we actually have the ladies apply it to the labia clitoris at bedtime. They will get the best levels. It will improve sex life, sexual desire. It is the preferred method. Now, you talked about a couple of different methods of getting testosterone. We should never take testosterone orally, okay? I would say that we should never use any hormone as a pellet. However, you can improve levels, but what happens is pellets are generally inserted surgically, I should point out. And they're expensive. Very expensive, and I think I say
painful.
This hesitantly. Yes, I've seen infections. Yeah. I've seen problems from pellets. And unfortunately, I think a lot of providers may know that the studies are not real favorable to pellets, but they can charge more because they need to do the surgical insertion.
And I did pellets for many years, and I did start having an effect where one came out of my body, one got infected, and it hurts.
Well, and it scars.
There's scars. And then what happened was she had so many little scars. She's like, I don't even have any more places to put a pellet in you because there's so many little scars that we can't get it in.
Well, and Janet, the big problem is people get really high levels in the beginning. And if the dose isn't right, well, you're stuck for 3 or 4 months.
And
with a cream, we can adjust every day if we need to.
Right.
But you get really high levels in the beginning, and then you start to crash. And so now, you feel good for the first month, but the next 2 months while you're waiting on your next pellet, you can feel like crap because your levels are down. So we want to mimic what God designed. You make testosterone every single day. And so the cream is the much preferred method to do that.
I was going to say, because several times when I've gotten a pellet, I knew I had too much. Because then I'm getting hair, facial hair, and I'm like, no, I don't want that.
Well, you can't adjust the dose, Janet.
But with creams, you can back off a little bit.
That's correct. So it's much better to do a daily dose and to be able to have the flexibility to adjust that dose. With a pellet, like I say, you're stuck for 90 to 120 days, no matter how good or how bad. And I've seen some really, really tragic stories of women getting stuck with a dose that is too high, and they can't, you can't take some away. You just got to wait it out. Yeah. So
that's hard.
Troches are okay because they're dissolved.
First of all, what is a troche? Most people don't know what that is.
So think of a little gummy bear that dissolves in your
kind of like a lifesaver
in your cheek or under your tongue. Yeah, like a gummy lifesaver kind of thing. Not the mucous membrane of the mouth will absorb hormones pretty well. But again, when you look at the studies for testosterone, they're done on the creams. Okay. So the troches are done daily. Mm-hmm. The dose can be adjusted. It's a little harder than a cream, but you can adjust the dose because you could take a razor or a knife and cut the troche down.
You can do it in half. You can do it in fourths.
Yeah, you can do something like that if you needed to. But just trust me, ladies.
So testosterone, we want the cream.
And you'll send me texts like I get all the time. Thank you.
And my husband thanks you.
Yeah, I mean, so it's crazy. Then we talk about, you mentioned there's 3 kinds of estrogen in a lady's body.
Let me see if I can get this right. So there's estrogen, there's estrone, estriol, and estradiol.
Correct. Except I'm going to put them in a different order.
Okay.
Estrone, E1, the strongest of all the estrogens, but a smaller amount in a woman's body. And when I say the strongest, the most growth effects, the most estrogen-like effects. So one thing that I probably should start with right here, to make this really the way I like to break this down, is ladies, think of this. Estrogen equals growth. Now, growth is not bad. Controlled growth is good. Estrogen equals growth, which is why ladies have breasts, different sized behinds. You know, that is a good thing. That makes a woman, the amount of estrogen that they make. Estrone is the strongest of those 3 estrogens that are found in a woman's body. Estradiol is E2, is the next most strong, the second strongest, and it is the one that is
That's
most...
the one we use in our bioidentical.
Yeah, that's correct. That's the one we're typically using in bioidentical because it has growth effects, but it has massive benefits, and it's the one that the ovaries will make.
Okay.
So estrone, the strongest estrogen, is often converted from estradiol, the second estrogen, E2, by fat. So women with high fat levels make more enzymes that convert estradiol to estrone, which makes them grow more, as in more fat, more risk of cancer. And that doesn't mean estrone is bad. It means it needs to be in check.
Is that where we get the belly fat during menopause?
Part of the belly fat, for sure, is the estrone levels start to go up. The progesterone and estradiol levels can start to go down. Alcohol increases estrone, along with a lot of other things. That's a whole different podcast, right?
We'll do a whole podcast on that.
But we need to understand that there's more than one estrogen, okay? So estradiol is the most commonly known, the most commonly talked about, the most common prescription that we would compound. It's also very common to have estradiol prescribed by a standard physician to be filled by the standard pharmacy, not compounded. Those tablets are China made.
Yeah, I was going
to say, they will not raise the levels. They if you look at the studies, you don't really get a lot of benefit.
And everybody's across the board's kind of getting the same amount, just more standard.
That's right. You can't adjust. Well, you can. There's 3 strengths, but it's very hard. We can make, in a compound, we can make literally any strength in the world. I mean, any strength that you need.
The difference being that your insurance would pay for that.
Probably your insurance would cover that. But if you've listened, and I know you've listened to all these, if you're looking for a copay to get well, you're looking in the wrong place. If you're in that system, you're never going to get well, okay? And it doesn't mean you shouldn't use that system. I'm just telling you, for optimal health, you're never going to get where you need to go. Because the providers who understand these things, number one, are not going to take your insurance because the insurance ties their hands and won't let your blood levels look out of balance.
Right.
They dictate what they can prescribe.
Yeah.
And then number two, they're not going to pay for your compounds. Right. And so now you're back to trying to get something from China or wherever that doesn't raise your levels. So estradiol, is the most common compound that we make when you say estrogen. I don't like to use the general term estrogen. I like to use estradiol because the drug companies and some of those side effects I read say that is estrogen. Okay? That is not estrogen. That is pregnant mare's urine. Yeah. So in other words, ladies,
horse urine,
pregnant horse's urine, and they say that is safe for you as a woman to take. And I always say only if Mr. Ed is part of your family line, right? Directly in your family tree. Why would a woman use a product, by the way, that is 50% estrone? Yeah. The strongest, most growth causing, most can be most dangerous when it's out of balance. Yeah. Yes. Estrogen, it's 20% estradiol or 25 somewhere. They are kind of vague on what they tell us. And then the rest are equine or horse estrogens from pregnant horses.
I don't want that.
How many pregnant horse estrogens does the average human woman need? Zero. So now you know how estrogen gets, though, in this box, and it says it causes heart attacks, it causes strokes, it causes blood clots, it causes dementia, it causes Alzheimer's, it causes gallbladder disease. Well, yeah, when it's 50% estrone from a pregnant horse, and I can't remember, there's a massive number of unknown horse estrogens in that product. Of course, it can cause some issues because a woman is not a horse. A woman does not weigh what a horse weighs.
And that makes it so much more clear when you can break down the different types and understand that. Because I had someone tell me the other day, "Oh, I'm on the estrogen patch." And I can get that from my doctor because all the patches are bioidentical now, but I don't think that's true. I think what you're getting from your doctor might not be the same as you're getting.
It can be bioidentical, Janet, but the problem is transdermal estrogen, or estradiol, because most of those patches are estradiol, does not give the protective benefits that we can talk about now of estrogen or estradiol. The protective benefits are things like prevention of Alzheimer's, prevention of strokes, prevention of heart attacks, prevention of bone loss, prevention of old age symptoms.
And women have more heart disease.
Yeah,
now than ever, right?
And
we have more Alzheimer's than men.
And you have more bone loss.
And more bone loss, right?
And
more
so patches or creams of estrogen, while they can help some of the vasomotor symptoms, the hot flash, those kind of things, symptoms, they do not show protective benefits for all the real reasons that I think a woman would want to have estradiol.
Okay.
So I can tell you that our preferred method, what my wife uses, who is a compounding pharmacist, is she uses testosterone cream and she uses estradiol capsules. Now, the ladies will be told, oh, it can cause a heart attack, it can cause a stroke, it causes blood clots, it causes all this. They're not talking about compounded, bioidentical, micronized progesterone. Right. They're talking about Premarin.
Right.
They're talking about horse urine. The studies definitely show, even though it's very rare, that that drug can create that when combined with anti-progesterone, which I don't think we're going to have time to get to today. We're going to have to take this introductory class and make it 2 classes because
and I have a lot of questions from
progesterone
women.
Is way too important to try to rush through.
Progesterone is so important.
Yeah, so we'll
do a whole class on progesterone.
So let's finish though with the third estrogen, estriol. Estriol. That's E3.
Okay.
Estriol is a very important estrogen for ladies, particularly for like vaginal tissue health, vaginal dryness health. So we will most typically see estriol used vaginally, okay, 2 or 3 nights a week if necessary. But with using testosterone cream and estradiol capsules, most women, when we get their levels proper or optimal, they don't need the estriol anymore. Okay. So that's something that's kind of evolved over the last decade, is we used to use a lot of estriol vaginally, and we still do make a lot of that. Mm-hmm. But when we can get the ladies' estradiol levels and testosterone levels to optimal levels, we often see the need for estriol goes away. And so that's a cost and something that they can typically then start to do away with, and they don't have to spend the money and they don't have to insert it, 3 nights a week.
You almost feel like you have to be a chemist.
You really don't, Janet. What you need to do is find somebody who's an expert in it, like me.
Yeah. And that's what I did, and that's why I've kind of got it
just
dialed
what
in
you did.
Finally. Right?
Yeah, and once we get you dialed in, it's typically smooth sailing. Now, in the beginning, there can be some adjustments, certainly. Yeah. We're not going to get the right dose necessarily every time. We got some really good ideas of where to start, and some of these hormones, we don't want to start where we think you'll be. We want to build your body up, and then we get you to a point, and we go, okay, and we're looking, by the way, we're measuring blood levels, because there are certain blood levels that we do want to reach on some of these hormones because we know how protective they are against cancers. See if these are important. Strokes, heart attacks, blood clots, cancers, Alzheimer's, dementia, bone loss.
Very important.
I mean, so you mentioned women's heart disease, and we should not ignore this. Women die about 1 in 37 from a heart attack before menopause.
And then after menopause, when there's
1 and 2.
no more, it's 1 and 2. So
Now, what
please
changes?
say that again. Say that again.
So this is very, very important, ladies. 1 in 37 women die from a heart attack before menopause. Or heart disease. I should be more specific. 1 in 37 women die from heart disease before menopause.
Before menopause.
Before menopause, when their ovaries, their body is producing hormones on a more consistent, regular, higher level basis. Then after menopause, which is becoming earlier and earlier and earlier for women, it goes to 1 and 2.
Wow.
Now, what changes?
Well,
Their hormone levels.
We drop all. We don't have any more estrogen.
Well,
we have,
the estradiol drops.
Right.
The testosterone drops. The DHEA drops.
Mm-hmm.
Most importantly, I think, the progesterone drops, which we're going to get to next episode. So progesterone drops, and you have this symphony now that was nice and vibrant and had all these great musicians playing, and now they're all old and shriveled up and can barely blow through their instruments.
Yeah.
And so now we have more diseases. And it's not just the heart disease. All these diseases go up, but that's the most telling is that statistic, 1 in 37 before menopause to 1 in 2 after. So women that say, well, I just want a little bit of hormones because I want appropriate for my age. Well, appropriate for your age is 1 in 37, 1 in 2 heart attacks. Wouldn't you rather be 1 in 37 than 1 in 2?
Absolutely. And it's not like you're trying to put all these extra numbers of hormones in our body. We're just trying to get up to what the normal levels would be.
Yeah, normal for a healthy, vibrant woman who looks good and feels great and has great attitude and in the it's really important, Janet, to point out that there are no drugs that I'm aware of or that the researchers are aware of that say they can improve, in the studies that say they improve quality of life. And when you think about it, when the average prescription drug has 398 side effects, it'd be really hard to improve quality of life, right, with that. However, we could fill this room up with studies from testosterone, progesterone, estradiol, DHEA, and pregnenolone that say that in the studies, the participants reported improved quality of life. So with supplements like the Foundational 4, with the bioidentical compounded micronized hormones, we can absolutely improve quality of life so that I can feel 18 every day, so that you can feel 18 every day, so that Johnny Paysauer, who was in here, said that he feels 21, I think is what he said, and he's 60. So, that's what we're going for. I don't want the levels of a 60-year-old. I don't want to feel 60. I want to feel 18. And in order to do that, I've got to do some work.
Well, I know I feel better and younger now than I did 10 years ago. And I'm probably in better health than I was 10 years ago. And I want to keep talking about this in upcoming weeks because I do want to talk a lot about what progesterone has done for me. And also we'll get to this and the next one is I hear so many women say I'm not allowed to take progesterone because I've had a hysterectomy. So
Janet, I can't wait to get to that next week.
Okay.
So we'll talk about it next week.
Cool. See you next week.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.